What's up, guys? It's Steven here from Cymatics, and welcome to episode 5 of the Ask Cymatics Show. I'm really pumped. I told people on episode like 1 or 2 that we've been labeling these 001, 002, 003 on YouTube for the sole purpose of I want to get to 999. We're gonna fill this sucker up, and it's gonna become essentially a daily ritual. I'm gonna evolve this. I've already been talking to other artists. Met up with my friend Ryan, who also goes by OTR, who's just had some really amazing stuff. Just joined Capitol Records. I'm like, yo, dude, come up here, get on the podcast. So hopefully he comes up. I got another friend, Kato, producer. Go check him out. He's actually going to hop on the show as well. He's from Atlanta. And I've been really excited how the show's turning out. A lot of people seem to be loving it. A couple things that I'm thinking in my head. I need to, the reason I'm stressing daily episodes and the reason you guys should kind of think about daily content as well is think about how you guys interact with, let's say a YouTube channel. You guys might watch a certain YouTube channel. Have you ever watched it and you go through all the content, and then all of a sudden when there's no more content, you're pretty much done with the channel and you go look for a new channel to kind of be your daily consumption? Well, that's why the algorithm favors people who are uploading daily so much, and the volume of content is so important. So I'm sitting here trying to do the same thing. No matter what, I try to start my day with a podcast episode of Ask Cymatics. So I'm excited about that. Couple other things before we get started in today's episode. Something I wanted to encourage people that I've been doing lately that's so good is don't be switching your entertainment, because everybody needs, you can't work 16 hours a day without kind of having a break or a breather, unless you're superhuman. There's some people that can do it, like Elon Musk, but if you're a normal human being like the rest of us, sometimes you can actually double up your work by switching your entertainment to something let's say, instead of watching a Netflix episode of something or some sort of anime or some sort of TV show, switch it to watching something like a YouTuber. And the reason I'm saying that is because you'll double your learning. Okay, so for me, for example, I started getting into a whole world of I'll get into all different types of world on YouTube. One of them recently was Poketubers. Literally these Pokemon YouTubers who do Pokemon theories, they do top 10s and all this stuff, and it sounds silly, right? But when you start watching how dedicated those people are to doing research on their topics, they'll come out with great content. They're doing crazy theories, animations. I'm like, oh my God. They almost set a new bar of how good content could be on YouTube for me. And then I found this guy, Game Theorist. He's doing really in-depth videos, and I thought that stuff was really sick on video games and stuff. And then recently, I actually watched an H3H3 podcast episode that actually featured Mr. Beast. And Mr. Beast is this 20-year-old dude who was pumping YouTube videos since he was 13. He started taking off, I think when he said he was about 17 or 18. He's at 16 million subscribers. But the dude's getting more views than PewDiePie. And if you watch his videos, they're crazy. It's I donated $100,000 to random Twitch streamers. Or he's I did this, crazy stunts. You know what I'm saying? And can you catch a bullet with 20,000 magnets, right? These weird, crazy things. But dude, every single YouTube channel has some gold to offer. So if you switch your entertainment from watching a TV show or something, which is harder to grasp tangible strategies and stuff for your music project, if you do something like watch one of those YouTube channels, a lot of times you can be oh wow, I wonder why nobody's doing this in the music world, or wow, I could turn that strategy into this little thing, right? And that's half the reason I'm doing the show. I saw Ask Gary Vee was doing it in the business world. I saw Joe Rogan doing podcasts, being successful. I've seen all these different people, and I'm thinking okay, why isn't this in the music industry? And that's why this show exists right now. You know when people get drunk and you're man, I gotta get some water in because I drank too much fucking alcohol. I'm like that with fucking coffee right now, which means we're gonna have a great episode, but it also means I need some water.
Ask Me Music wants to know, what's your advice on getting better at collaborating with other producers? I've been having trouble finishing anything that I start with someone else.
All right, so collaborating with other producers, it's got its pros and cons. If you're there's multiple, and there's also multiple ways to do it. If you really think about, one way to do it, it's almost like a remix. Okay, so you got to think, if you're remixing another producer's song, you're essentially collaborating. You're taking pieces of the original track, you're remixing it, releasing a remix, and that essentially is in a way a collab because you're using elements of stuff they worked on and you worked on. And I've seen the same thing with I'm glad I caught that. And I've seen the same thing with how producers collab. A lot of times a producer would just start a track, kind of get some stems out, and then give it to another producer to kind of finish it. And the thing I like the most when it comes to collabs is not actually going back and forth as much, but just more like, okay, one person runs 40 to 60% of the race, hands off the baton, and lets the other person finish it. So then that way there's not too much creative bickering going back and forth, because a lot of times that friction can make the track actually not get finished. It's actually better, in my opinion, to get to a certain point, hand it off, and have faith in that other producer to finish the track. Obviously, if you're collaborating with them, there's a certain amount of trust there, and you obviously trust them. And you should give them that creative freedom. Or maybe you're the person who takes the baton, like, hey, send me an idea that's 40 to 50% complete, and I'll go ahead and finish it. For me personally, I'm like for example, like I think me and Drew wanted to do like a little collab video for Instagram for our new lo-fi album that's coming out. And for me, I know how nitpicky Drew is. He's an awesome like second baton guy. Like I'd love to start something past to Drew, because he'll get so nitpicky with it, make sure the mix is perfect, all that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's even like a personality quirk, like who's the type of person who's better off at putting those finishing touches versus maybe just starting and putting some good ideas down. Okay, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and I would say is like that's the first way you can collab. So a way that you can actually finish those collabs instead of these things is fully let them take control and set a deadline, being like, hey, can you get done by this date? You have full creative control. Here's all the stems. Let's see what you can do with it. If you're collabing in person, I will say that it doesn't always turn out the best. Sometimes you get in the studio and nothing happens. It's normal. Every producer goes through that. Sometimes it's actually, I've seen some comments right here about the lo-fi album. People are pumped. I'm excited. More news about that, guys. But yeah, guys, sometimes you get in the studio and nothing happens. Sometimes, a full song comes together very quickly. Sometimes it depends on how well you know that artist. But sometimes not trying to force it if you're in the studio with a person. Some people are on tight deadlines, but if you're not on a tight deadline per se, sometimes like being natural, becoming friends with the person, kind of talking about ideas before you going into it can really help. I heard Flume, when he made Never Be Like You, he actually they weren't fully feeling it in the studio. I think they just said they went out to like a bar, like a sushi restaurant or something, just hung out for a little bit, and then kind of got inspired, got to know each other, came back to the studio and whipped out a hit record. Okay, so there's all different kinds of ways to do it. But if you are struggling to complete collabs, try that piece of advice where you only do 40 to 60% of the track, send it off and be done with it. Rely on that other person, or you're on the receiving end and you get that track, you finish the job, so that way there's not too much creative friction and somebody can just complete the task.
Ben wants to know, where do you think the future of music production is headed, and what excites you guys the most in the foreseeable future of audio production?
So the future of music production is honestly in like hardware, software, and like the cloud, and like the way we're all connected now with the internet, right? It's a lot more connected than it used to be. And something that I think is super interesting that I've seen little bits of is really like every single piece of software that's very complicated used to take like giant computers with a lot of processing power, essentially get simpler, and simpler. And you're even seeing a lot of people now that, especially, with growing our Instagram community, I've seen a lot of people talk about they just make music on their phones, and they're asking like, oh, can I make music with this? And what I'm starting to see is everything's getting a lot simpler for the end user. So the future of music production, I think what you'll see is you'll start to see some of these phone apps all of a sudden get better and better and better and better. And I bet you within the next 5 years, you'll hear about some hit record that goes like double platinum or something that's produced on a phone. I wouldn't be surprised. Another thing that I'm starting to see that I think is going to get better as internet connection gets faster, and internet speeds get faster and faster, what's going to happen is, I think, or this is a prediction, but I believe that a lot of the processing, it's hard to run Omnisphere, it's hard to run, FL Studio with a bunch of plugins, Ableton and all this stuff, especially with like people with not as good computers. What I think will start to happen is that a lot of that stuff will happen actually in the cloud. So imagine like you have a crappy computer, you just log into a web browser, all of a sudden it does all the processing up on the cloud, and it shoots you back the output. You don't notice anything. You just feel like you're in FL Studio or Ableton, but really all the heavy lifting is done by some supercomputer that's miles and miles, like hundreds of miles away from you. You've already seen that a little bit in the gaming world. What gaming company was that did that?
NVIDIA, GeForce Now.
Yeah, I think you were the one that told me you were playing, what game was it? Yeah, exactly. Like you can play different games now, and a lot of the video hardcore graphics processing is happening in the cloud, and then it shoots back. Okay. Same thing happens with like Siri, right? If I get on Siri and say the magic words, I don't want to screw up my live stream, because then Siri's going to take over and be like, "What do you want?" If I do that, all of a sudden I'm asking a question. That question gets shot up into the cloud, answers the question, shoots it back down. I believe that's how it works. I know that's how a lot of stuff works. A lot of apps do the same thing. Like if you're on a certain app, you know, it may be pretty lightweight, but then all of a sudden all the processing is done in the cloud. And I think that same thing will happen in the music production space. I also think that, you know, the programs are going to keep getting better and better. I mean, what Steve Duda has done with Serum, he like took it to the next level, but I think there's going to be more iterations of things like that as time comes on. And I'm also seeing a lot of stuff is going to be cheaper for the end producer. I think the producer is going to be able to pay. There's going to be a service, I don't know who it's going to be, that you're going to pay $20 to $30 a month, and you're going to get everything you need. Because everything's going to like $8 a month for all these plugins, and it's going to be like, you know, this much a month for all these samples and stuff like that. And I think a lot is going to that subscription service type stuff. And essentially it's going to get easier and easier for the end producer. Oh, real quick. And what that's going to do is that's going to open the door, and it's going to make the music industry bigger. Okay, it's going to make the music industry a lot bigger, and because more people, the more you take away friction, the more some random kid from across the country can just use his not as good laptop to produce the same types of music. So I think it's going to be really interesting for the music industry that there's going to be more doors opening up, and a lot of people are scared of that because it brings in essentially more competition. But in my opinion, it's better. It makes the market bigger and creates new opportunities, right? You know, it creates entirely new lanes. Look at Cymatics, a brand new lane. We're doing like podcasts, able to be successful, doing really interesting packs in different kinds of spaces. We're able to do software. We're creating new lanes because of the bigger market, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. I think we should lean into it.
Jordan asks, what are the most important things to take into consideration when building a brand and identity as an artist?
I mean, I think one of the most important things when you're building a brand or identity, especially as an artist, I think that not worrying too much about what your brand or identity should be. Okay, you're not thinking about what it is. It's you. A lot of it's personal brand. It's just you. So a big thing that I got from Gary Vaynerchuk when I went to VaynerMedia, and essentially I got, you know, a whole day session with their entire team, learned a little bit about the way they think about things, as well as a 90-minute session with Gary himself. What I learned is they're not about creating content. They're about documenting stuff. Okay, I'm not sitting here with Sam and Jordan planning how Steven Cymatics should act on this thing. I'm just literally answering questions on the fly. I'm documenting the process right now on IG Live, on the Cymatics page, on the Steven Cymatics page, and then I'm shooting this piece of content, but I'm not creating some sort of other type of person. Like, a lot of this stuff is raw. I actually tell Sam all the time, I say, leave it in, leave it in, leave it in. You'll hear me just say that. And I just want to capture more. So in my opinion, as a producer, you're creating cool stuff, right? You're creating great songs. You even have cool song ideas that don't get finished. You know, you're maybe collaborating with other producers. You know, you're creating cool art. I would just focus more on documenting that stuff. Okay, so the music production version of what Gary was talking about, documenting versus creating content, right? Documenting who you are as a personal brand, documenting your creative process versus creating this persona as an artist. The reason I like that so much is you get to just do you. So create songs. You can go back, and those 12 songs that are sitting on your desktop that you haven't released yet, take those and create little micro clips out of them. Me and Drew are getting hundreds of thousands of plays and millions of impressions on little mini song ideas that aren't even completed songs and stuff we haven't even released yet, just by showing a quick how-to or displaying something in a cool way, or thinking about some sort of cool video we can post on social media, okay? That's really, really powerful, and I think that's very important to really, you know, building a brand as an artist, just documenting your journey as an artist, showing off your creation process, showing, you know, how you made certain song ideas. That'll give you good feedback you need to actually make more music as well. And I think all that stuff is very important. So focus on documenting, not creating content.
Lawrence asks, how do you guys develop your marketing strategy? What marketing techniques do you suggest with a very small budget?
When it comes to small budget, we started Cymatics with less than $200, okay? Nothing fancy, like some basic internet setup, you know, website stuff, like I think it was like $10 a month for, I think we were using HostGator at the time. It's not very good. I wouldn't suggest it, but we were using things like that, using MailChimp for our email service provider, but everything else is free. Like, with the low marketing budget, you're actually at an advantage, okay? Because I know a lot of other people that thought it was cool to take money, go pitch investors and all that, and they're absolutely trash at running business because they've never been put in a real, like, they've never really been put to the test. And with Cymatics, me and Drew grew this thing from scratch. And we didn't have options. We didn't even know taking funding was an option. We didn't even know anything but, hey, let's just hustle out and figure it out. And what that caused caused us to figure out all the guerrilla marketing tactics that we've learned how to do. We built a Facebook group just by adding friends nonstop. Built that Facebook community, it's free. So I'm like sitting there, I'm DMing people, building relationships, putting out stuff for free on Facebook. Built that little community. I would suggest that if you have a low budget Facebook group, absolutely amazing. Instagram, okay? Follow other people, comment on other people's stuff, DM people, do anything you can. Collaborations, okay? YouTube channel, same thing, like put out videos. Servita suggested recently they should comment on other people's YouTube videos for traffic, on other production videos, like real good, genuine comments, not just like spamming some sort of thing. When you don't have a marketing budget, if you want to like promote anything, you need to like go guerrilla mode, okay? Like literally anything you can to kind of do that hand-to-hand combat, commenting, DMing, emailing, messaging, putting out content, everything you can for free. These days with social media, you have access to the traffic yourself. You don't have to pay for it, so I wouldn't worry about that. I actually think thinking about that budget puts you at a disadvantage, especially in the early days. Like now I know what to do with $100,000 marketing budget, right? I've spent over $800,000 on Facebook, but guess what? When I only had $200, I started with $5 a day. And that caused me to get much smarter because I had to make that $5 feel like $50 of marketing budget. I had to make my DMs feel like, I already had a big network in the music space. I had to make everything work when I didn't have much really to work with, and that actually makes you a lot stronger. So toss that budget out the window, and I would say go all in on just guerrilla marketing.
Emil wants to know, what was the biggest challenge with Cymatics, and how did you accomplish it?
I think one of the biggest things is like removing blind spots. And every single industry, I've realized this exists. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and everybody has things they're really good at that other industries aren't doing, and then they have their blinders, right? Music industry, for example. Artists are amazing at creating what I would call a product in another space. So the same way a makeup industry has their own like product, like little eyeshadow palettes and stuff, the music industry has their product, which a lot of times is the music. And I think that the music industry is amazing when it comes to creating a high quality product that people enjoy, but I think they have blinders when it comes to basic social media marketing, right? They literally can't see it. And what's happening is the blind starts leading the blind. So all these artists that want to make it are studying other artists in marketing areas, right? And one of the problems with that is that just think about it, like they should be following the other artists in terms of like the music creativity side and getting inspired by that. But when it comes to the marketing side, you should ignore it because they're actually not that good. So it starts to turn into that blind leading the blind, because if you're in a certain industry, you only stare at everybody else in your space. And I've seen this because I've actually hopped in other industries, the next one being the marketing industry. So in the marketing industry, what happens is that it's surprisingly, first off, they're bad at marketing. It's the most bizarre phenomenon that the marketing industry is bad at marketing. But what's happening is that the marketing industry is really good at building websites, building landing pages, squeeze pages, collecting emails, running Facebook ads, but they don't actually create a good product. They try and scam people for money and do all this stuff, but and they kind of get really aggressive. They're kind of like, they feel like used car salesmen. We've all seen those social media ads. Nobody really likes it. So, the secret for us is like looking at all these different industries and really trying to like taking off our blinders was a really big problem, because you actually don't know they're there. Right? Like, how do you like fix something that you don't believe it's true? It's like a certain mindset thing. So when we're in the artist industry, we only believe, you have a certain set of beliefs, and it's hard to get outside of that. Then when we started to look at another industry, like we started studying the marketing world a bit, well, we realized that they thought differently. We applied those things and combined them with the music industry, and we're able to remove some blinders. And now recently, we're starting to study what bigger brands are doing, what bigger personal brands are doing, right? Like what have those guys like Soulja Boy and the different artists like Blueface and all these people figured out, and what haven't they figured out, right? In the rap world. And in my opinion, those people, like those guys are literally commanders of attention on Instagram, absolutely dominating attention. They're really good at that. But maybe they shouldn't buy chains. Maybe they got blinders on chains and lean, and they shouldn't be doing that. Doesn't make any sense, right? Let's take something like, me and Drew haven't really announced this much, but we actually own a makeup company, right? And that's been going extremely well. It's something we do on the side. We consult my sister, who is essentially our co-founder, and she, has built an Instagram up to like 75, 80,000 followers. I've started to learn that different people in the makeup industry, they're really, really good at Instagram, and they're crushing it. They have no idea how to sell a product, right? So what happens is PokeTubers. I was talking about the PokeTubers and the content creators. Those people, amazing at creating content, amazing at building a brand, don't really know how to sell anything, right? And so what's happening is that every single industry has gems. And you need to like really go into those different industries and be like willing to like honestly believe that what you believe right now is completely wrong. Like me and Drew are completely like understanding that there is something in 2 years we're going to look back on and we realize that our mindset is completely off. And it's not until you unlock those things and then take off those blinders that you can get to the next level. So your own mindset holds your level of success to a certain point. And one of the biggest things with Cymatics was the reason we hit certain plateaus and it took years to get out of them is because we had those blinders on without knowing. And one way, just a practical tip, because I know this stuff kind of sounds a lot very heady / like almost out there. But if something practical you can take away is hang out with people that are way more fucking successful than you and don't ask questions. Like don't question what they're doing. Like try and just study it. Okay. So when I find somebody who's absolutely crushing me or way bigger than me in terms of like social media success wise, what I do is I go into student mode and I'm like, okay, I'm a fucking idiot. This person's really smart. Let me just ignore what my natural tendencies to believe are and just believe them blindly. And when you do that with people that are much, much higher level than you, the thing is you'll start to realize that they're probably right. They're probably right. And that's a really, really big thing. I did it when I went to VaynerMedia. There's certain natural tendencies that me and Drew believed were the smartest things to focus on as a business and a brand. I go listen to Gary Vaynerchuk. Me and Drew decide to shut up and just execute for 4 months on what they said. And guess what? The results have been crazy. 4 months later, we didn't have an Instagram before. Now we have, Instagrams that are over 140,000 followers, right? Cymatics one grew to over 160. Where Omega was our biggest launch ever. We have the best community we've ever had. Something that I never would have believed that a podcast was a good idea. Like if you would have told me 6 months ago before I met Gary Vee, that a podcast, like me sitting here talking on a microphone for the production community, would have been a good idea, I would have laughed you out of the room because I'm like, okay, how am I going to make the money back? And I was thinking more in terms of sales, all this stuff. I had those blinders on. Same thing goes for if you would have told me to focus a lot of my time on content on Instagram. I'll be like, what about the sales and all this stuff? If you would have told me, hey, you should do a lot of stuff for free to help other artists and music producers. Well, I would have thought more in terms of like, well, how is that going to sell stuff? But now that those blinders are removed, I'm doing everything I can to help the entire industry do all this value branding based stuff because I know that when I'm 30, some of these Instagrammers who only have 5,000 to 10,000 followers, some of these influencers, some of these lower level artists will be the people in the spotlight. And I want to do as much as I can to help them along the way. So then that way, when they're in that powerful position, I have awesome friends in the industry and I can, kind of pull some strings and do some stuff and leverage those relationships. But also I just don't expect much. But like if that happens, awesome. So yeah, back to the question. The biggest struggle for Cymatics is removing those blinders. But now that I know those blinders exist, essentially I'm kind of aware and I'm looking for them. I'm like, what other blinders do I have right now that are on that I need to take off? Got a strong amount of viewers going. Hope you guys enjoyed this, watching these live. Drop a thumbs up if you guys like staying tuned on the live and watching these live. And yeah, guys, by the way, go subscribe to the actual YouTube channel, turn on notifications because we're uploading every day. I want to upload from 10 to 12. I'm trying to get a consistent time. Me and Sam are still trying to figure out exactly what's going on because the reason I love this episode is I shoot for 30 minutes and then guess what? Me answering that one question becomes 3 little 60-second clips for Instagram. All of a sudden I've created, 4 pieces of content out of one. And then all of a sudden I take a little quote from what I said. I turn it to a quote picture. I throw that up on Instagram. That's another piece of content, okay? This is the Gary Vee content model, by the way. Go look up his 86-page content deck. It's really powerful. It's this strategy, and producers definitely can use it. All right, guys, I'm going to be answering a question before I get into that. I'm going to be answering a question from the live feed. I like to do the last question from a live. And eventually, we're going to turn this in. We're going to evolve the show, and eventually, I want to do call-ins. I think call-ins are sick. So we're going to start doing call-ins, but go ahead and ask a question. I'm going to find a good one here, and I will be answering it live. Somebody said, I'm going to go get some Starbucks. I don't blame you, bro. Somebody says, what does the fox say? I don't even know what the fuck that song is. Okay, so this question's coming from Crosshair Yo Air. Sorry if I botched I always botch Instagram names, but it's gonna give a shout out to him. It's KROSSERYONAIR. Make sure in the episode we tag him up. He says, what do you do when you run out of ideas? Okay, so this is very normal, okay? When you run out of ideas, the best thing you can do is just go copy other people. That is one of the most important things that you can do when you run out of ideas. Okay, so let's say like this show. This show is literally a carbon copy of the Ask Gary Vee show, but I was like, hey, the music industry, this will be sick, you know? And then what I do is essentially I get to stand on the shoulders of giants. I get to take a simple idea. Like, ideas don't always have to be original. Almost no ideas are original if you really think about it. There's almost no idea, no successful company, no successful brand that isn't already doing stuff that's already out there. Okay, it's not about who does something first. It's about who makes, like, who is the person who's known for that thing, you know? Even if you take somebody like Marshmello. Was Marshmello the first one to put on a freaking helmet? No. Deadmau5 crushed it with it, right? Was Deadmau5 the first person to do it? No, Daft Punk. And even before that, like, companies have had mascots and logos and all kinds of little characters like that for ages, okay? They didn't need to take a brand new idea. Like, there's great ideas in the world, and especially with the internet, there's thousands and thousands of content ideas, song ideas, branding ideas, you know, marketing ideas, collaboration ideas. What you should be doing is becoming a better listener and a better, like, observer. Start observing trends, okay? Don't try to create trends. Observe what trends are going on in different spaces, and then take those good ideas, take the 1 or 2 gems here, take the 1 or 2 gems there, start to combine these ideas, and that's what creates awesome new ideas, okay? And awesome, and ways you can really set trends is really just by observing other ones. So if you're starting to run out of ideas, you need to be studying other people more, because me and Drew are paying so close attention to so many different spaces that we'll never run out of ideas. Every single morning we talk for 30 minutes to an hour about new ideas we're seeing on social media, we're seeing on YouTube, we're seeing even in real life. Like, I'll be walking in, like, Walmart and see something cool that they do and be like, oh, we should do that online, you know? It's that powerful. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you guys want a chance to win a pair of these Audio-Technicas, just go to, if you're watching on Instagram, just hit the link in my bio. Just click the Ask Cymatics Show and go subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you guys want to get your questions answered, we're doing a new format. Ask at cymatics.fm. We're checking entries. So far there's been no entries because we haven't really announced it yet. So you almost get a guaranteed, right now, you almost get a guaranteed answer. I'm gonna say almost, because if they all flood in, I mean, nothing I can do. What we want is, you can, you know, ask a question just by putting in text, but what I would love to edit in here is a video. Like, literally take a selfie video and ask me a question. Yo, Steven, what do you think about X? Those are the kind of questions I'm looking for. I'm going to be putting people on the show that have that question and giving them a shout out. But anyways, thanks for tuning into the episode, and hope to see you guys on episode 6. Peace. Also, I wanted to say, if you guys are thinking about, tickets are selling really fast. If you live anywhere near Atlanta, have a short drive over from another state, want to fly in, I have a music industry networking event going down on April 24th. Is that correct, Jordan? Mm-hmm. April 24th. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. Go to the link in my bio if you guys want to check it out. Tickets are selling quick. People are bringing their friends. The venue space only allows 200. So we're selling 175 tickets because I have friends and different influencers and different people in the industry I'm going to be inviting. So if you want to come, I suggest you buy a ticket ASAP before they're sold out. Other than that, thanks for tuning in, guys. Peace.